Sorry about that. The Alston Manifesto, the document whereby the U.S. would offer $120 million to Spain for Cuba, and if Spain refused to take the deal, the U.S. would declare war and take it by force. The Gaza Purchase, 1853. The U.S. was concerned that California and Oregon were inaccessible by land, and the sea routes were too tough. So the debate became, should the Transcontinental Railroad run through the north or to the south? In 1853, the U.S. purchased the Mesilla Valley from Santa Ana for $10 million. As a result, the South boosted its claim to the railroads, and the North now tried to quickly organize Nebraska. The Kansas-Nebraska Act, 1854. Stephen Douglas proposed carving Nebraska Territory into Nebraska and Kansas. Slavery issue would be based on popular sovereignty. His main motive was to give Illinois the eastern terminus for the proposed Pacific Railroad. Kansas would presumably become slave, Nebraska free. The 3630 line prohibited slavery north of it, however, and Kansas was above it. So the solution was to repeal the Compromise of 1820. Southerners fully supported it and pushed Pierce to support the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Douglas successfully passed the bill through Congress. Northerners, however, reacted furiously. Some saw the Compromise of 1820 as a sacred pact. Douglas miscalculated the effects of his proposal on the North. Many saw him as being more concerned with his railroad, his state, and his presidential prospects than the issue of slavery. When the Kansas-Nebraska Act passed in 1854, the Northern reaction to it was they refused to honor the Fugitive Slave Law. The anti-slavery movement grew significantly, and the North was unwilling to compromise on future issues. The Southern reaction to the passage of the Act was they were angry that the Northern Free Soilers tried to control Kansas. The second facet to their reaction was the fact that the Democratic Party was now broken apart, and this effectively wrecked the compromises of 1820 and 1850. So with the birth of the Republican Party formed in response to the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and the Republican Party was not allowed south of the Mason-Dixon line. Harriet Beecher Stowe's book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, wanted to show the North the evils of slavery. It sold 300,000 books in the first year alone, over 2 million within a decade, and was easily the bestseller of all time in proportion to population. It was translated into many different languages and was immensely popular abroad, especially in Britain and France. The social impact was at the most pronounced of any American literary piece. The South condemned it and shuddered that hundreds of thousands of Northerners were reading such a vivid condemnation of slavery. Hinton R. Helper, The Impending Crisis of the South. He attempted to prove statistically that non-slaveholding whites indirectly suffered the most from slavery. The impact of his book was that it was negligible among its targeted audience, the poor Southern whites. His book was also banned in the South, and it was abridged by Republicans in the North as propaganda in the 1859 campaign. The Southerners infuriated the North using this book of lies against them. Bleeding Kansas. The New England Emigrant Aid Company sent 2,000 into Kansas to prevent slavery from taking hold and to make a profit. Southerners were infuriated by apparent Northern invasion. Armed Southerners sent into the region, many from Missouri, to thwart Northerners. Ironically, the struggle fought over was imaginary. In the 1855 election in Kansas for first territorial legislature, pro-slavery border ruffians from Missouri poured into Kansas to vote repeatedly. Free Soilers ignored the bogus election and established extra-legal government in Topeka. In 1856, a gang of pro-slavery raiders shot up and burned part of Free Soil Lawrence. Sumner was a leading abolitionist senator from Massachusetts who gave a speech crammed against Kansas where he lashed out at Southern pro-slavery rights and insulted a South Carolina senator. The Congressman Preston Brooks retaliated by hitting Kane over the head 30 times or more with an 11-ounce gold-headed cane. The House of Republicans could not find enough votes needed to expel Brooks, but he resigned nonetheless and was unanimously re-elected. Sumner came to symbolize for the North the evils of the slavery. The Pottawatomie Massacre. John Brown and followers in May 1856 hacked 5 men to pieces with broadswords in response to attack on Sumner. Brown, an extreme abolitionist who saw himself as a holy war, exerted a messianic influence over his followers, including his sons. The attack went unpunished by the legal process. Civil War in Kansas ensued from 1856 and merged with Civil War of 1861 to 1865. The Lecompton Constitution. Kansas had enough people to apply for statehood on popular sovereignty basis. Southerners still in power since 1855 devised a tricky document. People were not allowed to vote for or against the Constitution as a whole, but voted for the Constitution with or without slavery. If people voted no on slavery, rights of slaveholders already in Kansas protected. Infuriated free soilers boycotted the polls, and slavery rights approved the Constitution with slavery late in 1857. The federal debate on Kansas. President Buchanan supported the Lecompton Constitution. However, Senator Douglas fought furiously against it, and the House defeated it. There was a compromise, however. The entire Lecompton Constitution was resubmitted to popular vote in Kansas, but pro-slavery Kansas rejected the proposal. As a result, free soilers were victorious, but Kansas was denied statehood until 1861 when Southern secessionists left Congress. The impact on the Democratic Party was that Buchanan's support for Kansas split the Democratic Party along sectional lines. Republicans would win in 1860 at the expense of split Democrats, and it was ironic that Douglas's Kansas-Nebraska Act created a party that would defeat his party while he supported the North in the Kansas controversy that split his party. Sorry.